family, it's time for a true look at your world. Let's get hooked up for Pack Therapy. Here's your hosts, Tim Donnelly and Graham Hill.
And welcome in to the first basketball edition of Pack Therapy, the podcast. I'm Tim Donnelly, and joining me for the basketball editions of Pack Therapy, our very own Graham Hill from here at 99.9 The Fan. If you are unfamiliar with him, he's going to be our eyes and ears. He'll be out at the pressers. He'll be watching games and reporting back on everything that he hears. Once again, Graham Hill joining us here on the Pack Therapy podcast. Subscribe, like everywhere. It's going to be available on our YouTube page, 99.9 The Fan. It'll be available everywhere podcasts can be found, so go ahead and hit that subscribe and comment button. Graham, you ready for this?
This is awesome. I kind of feel like, I know Christmas time just passed.
True.
I sort of feel like that I've been upgraded from the kids' table at the holiday meals, now sitting here in this studio. I'm usually back there, for those that are familiar with me on 99.9 The Fan, but Tim, very excited for this opportunity to be co-hosting the basketball edition of Pack Therapy with you for the remainder of the basketball season.
So here's how I see this episode working. For those of you that are new here, we try to have guests on most of these pods. So we'll be talking with coaches, players, journalists. We'll be mixing it up. But with this kind of being the intro, right? You mentioned the holidays just passed. Football season also just passed. There's only one more game to play, and NC State's not in it, and that's the national championship game. So we're turning the page here. I thought we'd do a little intro, right? For those of you that have been locked in on Brennan Armstrong and Casey Concepcion for the last however many months, we thought we'd intro you to the basketball team because, quite frankly, the basketball team under Kevin Keatts, it's going to be different every year. They hit the portal. I've been known to call them basketball transfer U. They had 7 new faces this year, and that takes a little bit of getting used to, right? And if you've been paying attention to football, maybe you haven't gotten a chance to really dive in with them. So let's start with the big guy, DJ Burns.
Oh yeah,
he's in commercials. He's signing autographs all over the place. I was at ACC tip-off, which is the opening to basketball season in the ACC. He was one of the more magnetic people there.
Yeah.
When he walks into a room, everybody's eyes just kind of go like, what's going on over there? And he's wearing the sunglasses inside, and he's got the big smile on his face. He is, quite frankly, a monster.
And he's a likable guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember you saying at basketball tip-off, the example that you related to was at ACC kickoff. It's almost like when Dabo Swinney walks into the room. Everybody gravitates towards Dabo Swinney, whether it's his personality, whether it's his success on the football field. And you said it was sort of the same way with DJ Burns when he entered the room. And for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the impact that he had with NC State's basketball program last year. As you mentioned, how likable he was with his sunglasses after wins. It became a big trend on campus. So it's obvious as to why DJ Burns was the main attraction at ACC tip-off and really why a lot of eyes are on him in the ACC this year.
And from a basketball perspective, he's averaging 13 and 5, and almost 3 assists, which just goes to show his versatility so far this season. But going into ACC play, he is – I've been trying to think of the right way to say this. Unusual, unique, a throwback. I equate it when he is the focal point of the offense, which he is a lot of the times he's on the court. They are not like any other team in the ACC, which is an advantage, right? It's Syracuse's 2-3 zone, right? They're not like anything else in the ACC, and what that means is, if you have 3 days, before playing NC State, you have 3 days to get used to DJ Burns, and meanwhile, how many teams have a couple of stretch bigs, some perimeter scoring, and one decent center who's mostly defense and rebounding? It's like you don't really have to prepare for that uniquely. You prepare for that every week because that's how most teams are built. When you have a guy like DJ who's kind of a throwback big, can pass out of the post, wide body, knows how to use it, it's part of the secret sauce for why I think NC State has a chance to make a run.
And even then, like you just mentioned, using the example of you have 3 days to prepare for playing NC State, which for Notre Dame, who they play tonight, their last game was on Saturday, so they've had a couple of days to get ready for DJ Burns. even then, until you're on the court playing against a guy with that size, that physicality, and can move the way
and that
he
touch,
does,
yeah. Dancing bear.
there's no way to prepare for it until you're right there in the in-game scenario itself.
There's legends of, when Ralph Sampson was at Virginia, when you were scouting, like when you were getting ready to play, you'd give one of the scout guys a broomstick, right? And you'd say, all right, this is how high Ralph Sampson can actually block shots, and get everyone used to throwing their floaters an extra couple feet high or whatever. There's no, like, you can't just get a broomstick and be like twice as wide as you normally are, right? And have those shoulders and have that backside. So it's DJ Burns is part of the straw that stirs the drink. I would say most pleasant surprise, kind of going to somewhere else on the roster here, is DJ Horn. 3J Horn, if you pay attention on social media. The one part that comes, we're going to combine the DJs here. Excuse me. Combining the DJs. The one thing that DJ Burns needs is spacing, right? Because if you look at DJ Burns' three-point percentage, it's 0.0. He doesn't take them. He's not a stretch five. So you need other guys to provide that spacing. DJ Horn is shooting the gosh darn lights out. And if he can keep that up into ACC play, which starts in earnest tonight, and will continue, obviously, for the bulk of the season, that's massive for Kevin Keatts. And that, to me, is the reason why DJ Horn is one of the two guys leading the team in minutes. Like, you can't afford to take that spacing off the floor.
You mentioned the guys that Kevin Keatts went into the transfer portal and got. I think DJ Horn, no disrespect to any of the other guys on the roster, but I think DJ Horn has been the most effective. Transfer from Arizona State, appeared in 35 games, making 34 starts last season, averaged 12.5 points, 3.4 rebounds, and 2.4 assists per game. He was second on the team in assists, made 72 three-pointers, second on the team, and 35.5 shot percentage from long range. I mean, he's your dagger guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the one where at the top of the key, if you need a big-time shot, sort of what we saw from Duke last night in their win against Syracuse. When they're moving the ball in transition, the Duke shot, guy in the corner, knock down three. That can be DJ Horn for this team, and so far he's shown that just in the non-conference portion of the schedule.
Coming into this season, DJ Burns, all eyes on him. Casey Morsell, all eyes on him. We'll talk about him in a second. MJ Rice, transfer from Kansas, all eyes on him. I think maybe we should have had more eyes on DJ Burns. On DJ Horn. There's so many DJs. There's even Dennis Parker Jr., who, like, Dennis Jr. could be a DJ. There's so many DJs. DJ Horn, I think, is someone that, for my money, living up to this, coming into this season, I was expecting him to be a solid role player and spacer. He's been their best player for large stretches over their non-conference season. Moving along, Jaden Taylor, playing a lot of minutes, 13 points, maybe even the quietest 13 points per game in the ACC. If you look at the way this team is built, there are 4 guys averaging 12 or more. There's a couple more guys you would expect to play bigger roles and have been kind of held back for a multitude of reasons. But Jaden Taylor out there on the perimeter is kind of filling it up and doing a really good job of playing a role. If you listen to the afternoon show, I host The Drive on 99.9 The Fan. We often say everybody's playing a role, right? If you're putting on a show of Romeo and Juliet, Romeo's a role, right? It's just he has more lines. Jaden Taylor, as a role player, but a big role, is filling his role perfectly.
I appreciate how we're going to move the movie analogies that you usually do.
Play. Yes,
that you usually do when I produce The Drive with yourself to now the Pat Therapy Podcast. But I mean, you're absolutely right. Some roles have more lines than others. The thing with me, Jaden Taylor needs to get back on track as they enter ACC play. The junior transfer guard from Butler, Taylor, has shot just 7 of 28 at 25%, including 1 of 14 from three-point range in the last 3 games. In the 5 games prior, he shot 32 of 62 from the field and 13 of 31 from three-point range. So he's had those moments where the potential's there and the spark to kind of be that Jarkel Joyner to Jaquavion Smith last season, or vice versa for DJ Horn. But now it's just a matter of can he kind of get back into that mojo and that rhythm in the most important part of the season, which is ACC play.
I want to stick a pin in the statistics that Graham just brought up. I want to make our way through the rest of the roster here quickly as intros, but I want to come back to what you just said about the last 3 games. I think it's a point that deserves more diving into. I want to talk Casey Morsell right now, though. He is the president of the team, right? He is the I mentioned that we were at ACC tip-off. This is before the season even began. Talking with Morcell, he said, like, oh, it's my responsibility to make sure everybody comes together. He was talking about, when he's hosting something, right, getting the team together, he made sure to invite the 7 transfers, the guys from last year, the walk-ons. He understood that everybody needs to get involved, and I love that, right? That's so good, so important. It's the little things that you don't realize a veteran is doing. He has started a billion games for state. But I also I see that on the floor a little too much, where he's like, oh, this guy, he needs to get his. Oh, this transfer, he needs to get comfortable. Let me get him the ball. And occasionally I'm like, no, you're Casey Morcell. Like, if you catch the ball and you're open, knock down the jumper. You're a lights-out three-point shooter. He isn't shooting quite the high percentage I'd like him to, about 37 but from 3. But I still want him to get a little bit more selfish once everybody is established. I appreciate that he wanted to invite everybody to the backyard barbecue.
Play cards.
Yeah, exactly. He wanted to make sure everybody had a friend. I love it. But at a certain point, like, cook your steak to your temperature, to the way you want it to be, right? If you're a medium rare guy, cook it to medium rare, and don't just go around asking everybody else, how do you want yours? How do you want yours? Like, I want him to worry about him a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean that's fair, especially since he's one of the veteran guys on this roster. It seems like the storyline right now, just in the triangle that I'm seeing, is that veteran players are making a difference. Take Duke, for example, Jeremy Roach coming back. Mm-hmm. You're seeing that with some of the young guys on Duke's roster since they are still a pretty young team. Mm-hmm. And then with North Carolina as well, R.J. Davis and Armando Bacot. I can kind of see, NC State fans, hear me out here.
I was going to say, be careful what you're doing here.
I could see Casey Morcell, as you mentioned, if he sort of starts to become a little more of a selfish player and take some of those big-time shots rather than pass it out, he could be an R.J. Davis to this team. He could be a Jeremy Roach to this team in ACC play. Because, I mean, he has experience. He's a guard. He's a grad guard.
Yep.
So he's been playing college basketball for a while. He played at Virginia. So he's seen the ACC a time or two just in his collegiate career.
And then let's get to kind of the less minutes players on the team. There's MJ Rice, who's only played 5 games, but he's a transfer from Kansas. We expect big things. There's Ben Middlebrooks, who at times I've thought is still waiting to catch his rhythm this year, although he's hit some big shots. Michael O'Connell started off in a different kind of three-point shooting rhythm. He's down to 25%. I think they need him to knock down a couple more shots. Then there's Mo Diarra, who's been battling injuries, and there's Cam Woods, who's been battling eligibility, and for different reasons they haven't played all of the games. And there's a bunch of other guys that have seen spot minutes here and there, but that's a long bench.
Yeah.
Right? That's I would expect to see maybe that shrink even a little bit. I don't see where you shrink it. Maybe it's Middlebrooks and O'Connell getting a few less minutes, but you kind of, in games that matter, and when I say that, I mean there's going to be games along the way in ACC play, and especially if you make it to the postseason, which I expect them to, where you absolutely have to win. I would expect 7 guys in the rotation. But in the games right now, when they're still figuring it out, you might see 9 or 10 guys in the rotation, which is an unusual deal for a college basketball team.
Well, John Shire played 3 freshmen last night, and Duke's win against Syracuse. Now, granted, it's because Roach, Filipowski, and I think Proctor were in foul trouble in the first half, so you kind of had no choice to. But you're exactly right in the ACC play, and also in this non-conference portion of the schedule, right?
Yep.
We've kind of seen a set rotation out of Coach Keats, out of the starting 5, of course, and then maybe just 1 to 2, maybe 3 players coming off the bench. Now the rubber hits the road. Now this is where it really starts to matter in college basketball. And to kind of throw guys off, especially in film, for NC State's opponents, when all they've really had is just the non-conference portion of the schedule to look at, this could be how you kind of throw some trickery in there if you're Kevin Keats. I mean, this is the reason why he went to the portal, right? You want to try to get the best out of the whole country as far as talent. And so this is a good opportunity for you to kind of expand your bench, give some guys that have kind of eased into playing times during the conference portion of the schedule, or just some guys that have been grinding out in practice. I mean, this is the time where you can kind of change up your lineup and throw, to put it in football terms, a deflection or blitz to your opponents.
Tim Donnelly, Graham Hill. Again, I want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Download, listen, like, subscribe, tell all your friends about it. We'll be having some pretty sweet guests coming up here in the not too distant future for NC State basketball fans. So tune in. Right now, this is the story of NC State. I feel like by now in the basketball season, even if you might be a fan that was focused on football and you're just making the transition over to basketball. Those that have been paying attention to basketball, by this point in the season, you kind of already know, what the big challenges are going to be. You kind of already know what the storylines of the season are. And for me, NC State, it's very simple. It is solidifying the things that have been unknown and or dealing with the wrenches that have been thrown into your system. 7 transfers coming in. That's a tough transition right there, right? You have to get used to knowing where guys want to catch it, what style they like to play, where are their spots, all those sorts of things. But then they've had this added challenge of MJ Rice starting the year hurt. And he's not in there, he's not in there, and then all of a sudden he is, and he's playing low minutes. And MJ Rice is a really good player. Okay, he's a transfer from Kansas, and I know everybody likes to think that all recruits diamonds in the rough. If you go to Kansas, you're kind of legit, right? If there are certain programs that are just that way, so him coming in as a transfer, you're expecting him to play a big role. Now he's hurt and he can't play that role from the beginning, so it's going to be difficult to work him in. Meanwhile, right, DJ Burns is used to getting his looks, and DJ Horn is used to getting his looks, and Casey Morsell is used to getting his looks, and on and on. So who's going to, I don't want to say take a back seat, but who's going to take, 80% of the shots they've been taking so MJ Rice can grab 20 of those? And then before I let Graham jump in here, Cam Woods, kind of similar, right? Because he was ineligible to start the year, and then there's a lawsuit that takes place. The NCAA finally says, all right, this year we're not enforcing the double transfer waiver rules, so if you are a double transfer, you're eligible to play. Cam Woods comes in, and he's another big to add to the rotation that you didn't have at the beginning of the year, but where are his minutes coming from? Where are his shots coming from? And then on top of that, Mo Diarra, who was there at the beginning of the year, starts dealing with an injury. He's trying to play his way back in. There's a game during the non-conference schedule where he would have been available to play if they needed him, so he's in uniform, but he's not playing. He's on the bench. There's a game where he plays 5 minutes. There's a game where he plays 4 minutes. So and he's an athlete that you want to get onto the floor. Where are those minutes coming from? Who took those minutes when he got hurt? That is, to me, the hardest part for Kevin Keatts and this team this year is whose role is what role, and whose role is diminishing, and how do they deal with that? It's a really interesting social experiment that started with 7 new transfers and hasn't really been solidified.
Yeah, similar to another red and white team that plays inside PNC Arena, the Carolina Hurricanes, like Rod Brindamore has with all of his lineups. You're exactly right. How does Keatts kind of dictate the playing time between these 3 guys? Because to me, these are the 3 most interesting players on this team based on the storylines that you just provided. The injury with Cam Woods coming from Kansas, like you mentioned.
MJ Rice.
Or, excuse me, MJ Rice. You immediately hear Kansas and you think to yourself, wow, this guy's going to be a breakout star. Now, granted, he didn't play that much.
But even his intro, right? The first game he played, his debut, was in Reynolds Coliseum on Heritage Night.
Yep.
It's David Thompson night where they're unveiling the statue. And right at the end of the game, MJ Rice goes down for a full court dunk that gets David Thompson clapping for him. It's like, whoa, this Kansas transfer is the truth. And then like a couple games later, he plays 3 minutes, and it's okay. He's still playing his way back from injury. So there's it's just in and out and shuffling of everything, which if you're a team that had played together for 3 years, it's like, all right, MJ's out. You got his minutes. You're going to play his role. You're going to cover his ball handling. You're going to cover his defense, and everybody just kind of knows how to do it. But he's never even been in there in those situations. So now that he is coming back and you expect him to be, it's a tough transition for everybody.
Yeah, but to your point, everything you just mentioned as far as how does Coach Keatts dish out this playing time between these 3 players, is that necessarily a bad problem to have?
No. It's not. It's just the story of the season. Trust me, you want – I feel like, maybe this goes without saying, you want the best players possible on your roster, and that goes for even the ones that are playing very, very small roles. Like if you can have a super stud playing 10 minutes and, helping when guys get in foul trouble, that's great, right?
Yeah.
It's this is if you listen to The Drive with Tim Donnelly when Graham is hosting, we always go to the movie references. I've now made a theater reference. I'm about to make a literature reference.
I'm excited.
Have you heard the saying, kill your darlings?
Yeah.
Okay, kill your darlings, for those of you that haven't heard it. It means when you're writing a book, if you have 10 great characters and they're all fully fleshed out, they're all real, they feel real, they're all necessary, and you're like, you know what, it's too many. I have to cut 3 of them because, this book is really better with 7 characters. If you cut 3 great characters, like 3 fully formed, exciting, interesting, they have great storylines, if you cut those 3, that's unbelievable because you're right. You're going to cut your worst 3. So that means the 7 that you kept must be over the moon unbelievable because they're better than those 3 great ones that you cut. Kill your darlings is the saying. So if you have studs on your roster that can't get into the main rotation, just think about how good the players are that are in the main rotation.
That's fair.
Right? So it is a good problem to have really good players that you trust in games that just can't work their way into a rotation. The hard part is dealing with them as humans. When you're doing it with characters, right, you cross them off a page, they don't go, what the heck, coach? I didn't transfer here because I didn't want to play. I didn't transfer to the ACC to watch other guys play against all of these cool opponents. I transferred here to play. Or I didn't stick around and not go into the portal to not be a featured member of the team. What the heck? You don't get that from characters on a page. You get that from players, and that's the social experiment I'm talking about.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of what Coach Keats said after that Heritage game against Maryland Eastern Shore, where he said, my problem this year is that I might not know who my leading scorer is going to be every single night. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It seems like last year it was always Jaquavion Smith, Jarkel Joyner that were the leading scorers. Mm-hmm. This year with all these guys, it allows opportunities for diamonds in the rough, as I like to say, to come out and perform in ACC play.
And I agree with that. I do think you need to know, and in basketball, actually, when I'm talking about other sports, I use basketball as the example of how to explain this. I do think you need a player or 2, right? Let's not split hairs here. But when the other team hits like 2 threes and a fast break bucket, and the roof is about to come off, you're on the road, right? You're playing at Miami, or you're playing at one of the other schools in the Triangle, or you're playing at Syracuse, right? Some of these schools that really care about basketball, and their team, you're up 4, okay? Their team hits a 3, you're up 1. Their team hits a 3, you're down 2.
Yep.
Their team gets a fast break bucket because one of your freshmen is rattled. Now you're down, right? You're down, whatever, I do the math on that one, down 4. Who are you giving the ball to stop the bleeding, right? You need to have one person who you're like, I'm not calling timeout. Give it to so-and-so. They're going to go. They're going to get fouled, or they're going to get an easy bucket down low, or they're going to, run a 2-man game with their favorite big and get an open jumper. Like that I do think is important. I think that's DJ Burns for them, but probably with the opportunity to kick it out to DJ Horn right now, kind of like an inside-outside pass. That's their bread and butter. But I don't like it when teams are like, oh, on any given day, anyone can be the leading scorer. I'm like, that's fine. All right, if it's just a volume thing and so-and-so gets hot and you let them score their 17, fine. But you do need to have like your one alpha scorer or your one, I don't like using the term alpha, main, like a protagonist to be the guy, and I do think it's important they figure that role out.
You need a guy where if it's going to come down, and it might, and it will at some point this season, especially in ACC play, you need a guy where a game's on the line, you call a timeout, comes down to one last possession, Kevin Keats in the huddle, all right, who are we putting the ball in the hands to make this game-winning shot?
Well, see, I think that's even a little different. I think that's Casey Morsell because perimeter is always better in that situation. You very rarely see like a post touch in modern basketball with like 10 seconds on the clock, down 1. But also, I just love his decision making. I think, and the veteranship. You mentioned he's a grad student, which is very rare for a player of his caliber. I think he's the guy you want the ball in the hand at the end of the game. but I still think DJ Burns is the engine that's driving the offense. And I think it's important to have both, right? It's not a situation where you just want one. So, I'd feel comfortable with that. And by the way, and this is where I'm talking, it might be MJ Rice.
Yeah.
It might be by the end of the year, MJ Rice, as he gets more healthy. We haven't seen it yet because he hasn't had really the opportunity to open it up. But I'm excited to see him do it.
Or Cam Woods.
Or exactly, we really haven't seen much of Cam Woods. But the fact of the matter is, tonight, as we're recording this at Notre Dame, Saturday they play versus Virginia at home, which I think every ACC stretch is tough, but the next 4 or 5 games. Probably not including Louisville in that. I think we're going to learn a lot about NC State in the next 5 games with, like I said, not including Louisville. They go Notre Dame, Virginia, at home against UNC, number 8 in the country right now. Then the Louisville game, which is a nice little reset. Louisville has not impressed anybody this year. Then Wake Forest at home. And Wake, they are pretty talented. So I think we're going to learn a lot about NC State in the next couple of weeks here, and I think we'll be covering it all right here on Pack Therapy.
Yeah, when I mentioned that the rubber hits the road in conference play, the rubber's going to hit the road right out of the gate for NC State. But 18 games remaining this season. 11 of those games are at PNC Arena. 7 of those are on the road. So it's kind of a favorable conference schedule for NC State. They've only played 2 true away games so far, 3 neutral site games. So a lot of opportunities for you to get out to PNC Arena and catch this fun and exciting NC State squad that we should be seeing in ACC play.
And a lot more where that came from. Pack Therapy, we'll have a guest next week, and we're working on getting someone sweet for you. So we'll see you next week. Grant, appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim.